friends. Nice to see you here today. Our subject this morning is beyond pleasure and pain. If there was a founding basis, a founding slogan on which our country was formed, we might say that it was the guarantee of the people of this country the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But we find, in fact, that we have somewhat confused these principles, particularly the last one. And we might say that the principle on which this country has functioned has been life, liberty, and the pursuit of pleasure. And that because of the pursuit of pleasure, we have not attained the true life that we sought when this country was founded. We have not attained the true liberty that this country believes in. We seem to have destroyed, to a large extent, the happiness that we have sought. Now, this may not seem true. After all, we have cars, and we have homes, and we have television sets, and we have good water, and food that we can buy and fill ourselves with. We have all the good things of life which many countries are lacking. Yes, surely we have much in these respects, but happiness, that light in the heart of an individual that makes him happy whether he has things or not, that light that shines from within, that does not require a new car to prove to yourself that you are happy. This I do not find as much in this country as I have found in countries that live a lot more simply than we do, that do not have some of the wonderful things that we have achieved. And to say that the goods that we have are necessarily bad would be a mistake. Many of them are right and proper. To take as an alternative the poverty and the starvation that we find in many parts of the world would be a ridiculous choice. But if it is really happiness that we are seeking, then we must understand that this question of pleasure is not the golden key that will unlock the door to what we are seeking. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of pleasure. As soon as it's pleasure that you want, you start thinking in terms of things to get, of experiences to achieve. In fact, a very interesting thing about pleasure is how much it ties in with pain. For example, look at the advertisements. In order to make you buy something that's going to give you pleasure, they've got to make you convinced of how miserable you are right now without that thing. Isn't it? They have to constantly tell you that you won't be really happy until you get this Cadillac or this Chevrolet or this Plymouth, until you get a Plymouth Fury that will help you to drive faster than the next guy, and so on. All the ads seem to cater to a desire for nice taste thrills, beautiful homes, lovely clothes. Usually it's cigarettes or whiskey. And these things are supposed to give us happiness, but the kind of happiness that we get with things is to be seen in the experience of those who go out and, for instance, particularly, most obviously, buy that whiskey. Sure, it tastes great, but the hangover afterwards does not feel so good. And here we come to the basic principle that I wanted to discuss this day, and a basic principle of the philosophy of life that was discovered years, centuries, thousands of years ago in India. The fact that for everything in this world there is something opposite to it, and that everything seems to come, as it were, in pairs. You never get just heat. Heat is only heat in opposition to cold, otherwise it wouldn't be anything. It has its reality because of the existence of cold. Darkness has its reality because of the existence of light, and vice versa. As I said a couple of Sundays ago, good has its reality because there's evil to make it good. Evil has its reality because there's good to make it evil. Everything in this world is founded on this simple principle of duality, of positive and negative. The one spirit, when it sought to create in this world, had to take on an appearance of being two, an appearance of this, just like a tuning fork. You have it in the center, and it doesn't make any noise because it isn't moving. You strike it, and it begins to vibrate, and then the sound comes out of it. The vibration in opposite movements from a state of rest in the center is what can be used to describe the movement of the spirit. There's really nothing going on at all. It's just going this way and that way, but it's all originating from a core that is forever unmoving. The central calm of the spirit is the only reality. And this thing is just a temporary thing that goes on. But it is the foundation of everything that has been created in this universe. All things exist on the basis of the principle of duality, Dvaita. Light and darkness, heat and cold, love and hatred, male and female, up and down, pleasure and pain. It's very interesting that the people who seek extremes of pleasure will also have to bear the burden of extremes of pain. I have seen that people who look to be happy in a moody way, look for happiness in the senses, in the emotions, will do find that they also go through periods of intense black moods, intense depression. You know the particular mania of manic depression. But this is merely an extension of something that people go through in this world in direct proportion to the extent that they seek their happiness outside instead of inside. And it's curious how very much, even in the very existence of pleasure, pain is to be found. Even in the very existence of pain, pleasure is to be found. The two seem to be almost inextricably united. It isn't merely that they alternate in supremacy, it's that in the midst of each, the germ of the opposite already exists. Look at the pains of this world. The experiences that people have gone through while they're going through them seem very painful. But after they are over, they give them something very good to talk about. Somehow they seem to almost glory in telling you about that terrible car accident they had 10 years ago. You'd think they'd want to forget it, but no, they hug it to them. There's a certain amount of pleasure that they get in talking about things like this. Some woman came to my teacher one time and said that she'd had an operation and she'd gone through so much pain, and she went into harrowing details of this operation. And finally he stopped her after about half an hour of this diatribe and monologue, and he said, "Well, when did you have this operation?" She said, "Well, 20 years ago." He said, "You've been having it every day for 20 years. But the fact is that she'd have been unhappy probably if she hadn't been able to talk about that experience. There is a great deal of truth in the principle of tragedy, catharsis. Aristotle pointed out many centuries ago, the great Greek philosopher, he pointed out that the benefit of tragedy, of the tragic plays, is that it leaves you feeling uplifted, not pulled down. It has to have certain elements. I remember going to a movie many years ago that was intended to have all this same tragic effect of catharsis that Aristotle talked about, and it really did make you feel sick afterwards, because it was a story that was not elevating. It was about a gangster who finally got his just dues and so on, and it tried to follow all the rules, but it failed miserably for this reason. Nevertheless, somehow in supreme tragedy there does seem to be a certain amount of joy. I don't know how else to describe it. If one takes it in the right way, one can feel that joy then. If one doesn't, one feels it later. One looks back and he realizes that really my life has been worthwhile because I've gone through these things, because it wasn't so drab, because I didn't have just every door opening for me, but because things often went wrong. It seems as if life conspires to teach us this lesson. As if it's only in the times of extreme difficulty that we seem to grow. I remember one time with our teacher, we had been building a swimming pool. We've been digging out the sand from the desert. This was out at 29 Palms. And we didn't know where to put it. There was nowhere to put it. So we had these mounds of sand all over the place there. And finally one day, it was just about lunchtime, and we'd been working in that hot sun and just were eagerly waiting for lunch. And he came out, my teacher came out, and he told us to get a 2x4. We were going to level one of these piles just to see if it could be done. He said, then you can have your lunch. So we took a 2x4, and that's heavy work. You have to move it back and forth like this. I'm not a big man. I think I weighed about 140 at that time, and this other guy who worked with me was about 225 and a wrestler and very strong. And he was already sweating and grunting after the first one, and then Yogananda said, well, just one more. So we went over and started leveling another one. He said, well, just one more. Well, this kept going on. And you reach a point where it's sort of a breaking point. You either get into a temper or you cry on the one hand, or you just laugh. And I just stood up and laughed. And then Yogananda said, I'm playing with you. And he smiled. He said, all right, now you have your lunch. But the thing is that he wanted to bring us to this point of breaking, because not to break us, but in order to give us strength. It's only at those times that you grow. It's only at those times that you really gain something. And instead of sitting around weeping and moaning, last week I had a truck somebody gave me, and we were miles from nowhere up in the country. I've been building a retreat. And this truck broke down somewhere just way out in the wilderness, and I tried to get a ride, and I suppose I don't have an honest face or something, because nobody would give me a ride. And about 50 cars passed. Finally somebody did, and in the meantime I'd been walking in sandals for about 8 miles in the hot sun. And I remember I reached one point where my blisters were getting so bad, and nails were coming up through the sandals, and I was bleeding, and I was walking with one sandal in my hand, and the car wouldn't stop, so I held this sandal up. And so he stopped and said he was awfully sorry. He couldn't give me a ride, but he worked for the county, and they weren't allowed to pick up hitchhikers. So anyway, I thought, well, as the blisters came, I thought, well, come on, let's just chant and have a good time. And the worse they get, the better it should feel. Really, if one takes it this way, one can really enjoy even difficult situations. But if not, then one will enjoy it sooner or later. I mean, 5 years from now, I'd certainly enjoy being able to tell people about that hard time I had in the sun, walking through there and getting blisters, and gosh, you should have seen how tired I was, and all these things. But why not be able to feel it right away? The thing is that in pleasure, in pain, there is, as I said, a germ of joy, because the two opposites are part of one and the same thing. They haven't any reality at all, really, except, but I'll get into that later. What about pleasure? Does it have in it the germs of sorrow? Yes, it does. I just happened to think of a song that was popular when I was in school. Bésame, bésame mucho, como si fuera esta noche la última vez. Kiss me as if this were the last night. Many times in pleasure, pleasure only seems to be only seems to gain intensity when we feel that it's the last time. We may lose it or something. In fact, there seems to be in pleasure a certain amount of desperateness, a certain amount of pain, of anticipation, a certain amount of frenzy, the thought of loss, the thought of, I don't know, often in laughter I've noticed this. If people laugh a little bit, sort of quiet, happy laugh, it's not quite so much, but as it becomes intensified, you hear in that kind of laughter almost it's hard to tell if they're laughing or crying. Strange. They sort of desperate laugh. I heard one time years ago, this was an interesting experience for me that I may have mentioned before. We were on a New Year's Eve sitting in meditation down in Los Angeles, and it was just about midnight, and we were feeling very, very peaceful, very, very wonderful. A great joy was welling up from within us, when suddenly 12 o'clock struck. We were up on a hill where we could hear all the bedlam break loose, whistles blowing and car horns honking and all sorts of things going on, and a door opened on a house nearby, and somebody shouted into the night, "Happy New Year!" And there was so much strain to make it feel happy that I couldn't help feeling that that's not happiness at all. This is what pleasure often is. Aren't we having a good time is a question asked because you want to convince yourself that you're having a good time. Isn't it wonderful? We have to keep pinching ourselves to be sure that it's real. No, in the midst of pleasure there is already a certain germ of sorrow, a certain germ of pain. In fact, the two are one and the same thing. They merely manifest different faces, but they are the same. Pleasure and pain. But what is that same? Many a person takes a stoic attitude and say, "Oh, they're unreal, and I'm going to go out into the woods and eat dirt like Timon of Athens," that play of Shakespeare's. A sort of cold attitude that refuses to enjoy anything because it's afraid to suffer also. This kind of cowardice I do not respect, because I do not think that we will grow by killing our faculties. To say that I refuse to enjoy anything in this world because I have become disillusioned by the pains, the treacheries, the unfulfillment, the disappointments of this world would be absurd. It is to become less a man rather than more a man. There is nothing to be gained by killing our faculties, by refusing to feel. There is nothing to be gained by becoming less sensitive to beauty, to joy, less full of the sense of wonder. In fact, this is one of the things on the spiritual path that people find, that they increase their capacity for joy. They increase their capacity for wonder, for delight in the universe around them. But it's because they have found the cure. They have found the way out of this constant fluctuation that ultimately ends up not being a fluctuation so much as just a rearrangement of the same old thing. Not a change so much as just different faces of one thing that never changes. Again, you find many people, especially artists, poets, musicians, who feel that, well, there is no fun in being bored. There is no fun in going through life, as so often people do, and in the cities you find it especially. People seem, not so much in San Francisco, though somewhat here, but very much in a city like New York, where there is so much crowding, so much crush, that the people build protective walls around themselves, and it's as if they were afraid to laugh. You will notice that the humor in New York especially, I've noticed it, has a cutting quality to it. As if, yeah, I want to say something funny, but I don't want to lay my heart open so you can stab me while saying it, so they make it cruel. There is a hardness that comes into modern life, a self-protection, but a hardness nonetheless that gives people ultimately the quality of not being able really to say, "Oh, I'm enjoying myself tonight, but, well, it isn't bad." That's how they talk. It's okay. Or you say you see something wonderful, and perhaps with the glee of a child you'll say, "What a beautiful painting," and you'll say, "What's the matter with him?" Or how about that? Or some remark that is either designed to kill you or to just sort of pass it off apathetically. In fact, I think that the pleasure that we seek in this country is not sought so much to escape pain, although that's a large part of it, but I think rather it seems to be to escape boredom. We have so much. When you get too much, are surrounded not only with too many people, but too much luxury, too many experiences, a plethora of wealth, you become bored. It's no accident that the highest suicide rate is, proportionately speaking, is among the millionaires, not among the beggars. They have everything, and then what? But the artistic people often seeing this, seeing the bourgeois type of person going out and just making money and going home and watching TV, and he thinks, "I don't want such an apathetic life. I don't want to just live my life in such a dull way. I want to feel." And so he tries to feel in an emotional way, and he goes up one day and down the next, but he's happy that he can feel miserable because he thinks that then he can write a poem about misery, and then he's happy that he can feel glad because then he can write some beautiful song about joy, but it's all from the emotions, fluctuating one way and the next. He pushes his emotions constantly to extremes, like that poem of Edna St. Vincent Millay. She said, I burn my candle at both ends. It will not last the night. But my friend, my foes, and my friends, it gives a lovely light. Well, frankly, I doubt that that light was very lovely, if that's what she was doing. I don't know much about her as a person, but I know that people who burn their candles at both ends, pushing their emotions to extremes, do not give lovely lights. On the contrary, they become neurotic. They become no longer capable of really feeling deeply about anything. It becomes ultimately a sham. There is this character in that operetta Die Fledermaus, who he's a rich baron who offers to pay a huge reward to anybody who can make him laugh. Finally, after this great episode of nonsense, he becomes somewhat amused, and he says, "Ha! Ha! 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 I laughed, you shall be rewarded." This is the extent to which he's able to laugh. Well, the thing is that people who get too much of emotional satisfaction reach the point where they are unable really to respond one way or the other. The answer, my friends, is not to be sought in the emotions. But then you may say, then how am I to feel? The emotions are merely an expression of the soul's capacity for feeling. The waves are an expression of the ocean. They would not be possible if there were not an ocean underneath them. The deeper the ocean, the higher the wave is able to go. Similarly, with the feelings. The deeper you are inside, the more intense your feelings will be, but you will be able to feel them in the right way. The fact is, as I was pointing out, that even suffering, even pain, even adverse circumstances have within them the germs of joy. The reason ultimately being that there is nothing in this world but joy. Not that this world is a cause for bitterness and disillusionment, but that at the basis of everything there is joy. And when we speak then of going beyond pleasure and pain, which is one of the things that are necessary on the spiritual path, that are necessary for human growth, the ability to be able to absorb the shocks of life. This doesn't come unless you can absorb the pleasures, the joys also. To be like a capacious ocean. There's a delightful metaphor in one of the Shastras in India. It says that the shallow man is like a pond in which even a little fish can make a huge commotion. But the deep-minded person, the man of deep perception, is even the whales of inspiration will cause hardly a ripple. So it is with a great man, or with a person who has gone deep within himself. He will be able to enjoy, and he won't go all to pieces with his enjoyment. He won't start cackling like a fool. He may find suffering, he may find sorrow, and he will at the same time be able to take it, and he will give it up. Ultimately it becomes a question of yajna, of sacrifice. It becomes a question of whatever comes to you, offer it up on the altars of your inner perception, and understand that everything is really but an expression of that inner self. It's true. Do you know that you would not be able to feel joy in anything were it not for your capacity to respond to that thing? You don't feel joy in things. If it were so, everything would give joy to everyone. But the fact is that what makes you happy may make me unhappy. What gives you pleasure may give me displeasure. You may like beef, and I may find it unpalatable. You may like ice cream, and I may not like it. This means that the joy is not in the thing. The joy is not to be found in the beef or in the ice cream or in circumstances in any way. It is to be found in our capacity to respond to those things. Our capacity for response. An example, I'll tell you this because it's sort of an example both ways of what I was saying before and of what I'm saying now. I was coming in a plane across the Atlantic from England to New York a few years ago. And I was in the middle of those 3 seats that they have, and they're not very big. Well, plunked next to me on on the window side was a man about 230 pounds, very big, very large. He was an Englishman, but a rancher in Peru. And he was a non-stop smoker. Well, I just don't like smoking. It sort of sometimes makes me feel somewhat ill. And he was so bad that even when we'd take off or land, he would sort of hide his cigarette from the stewardess so he wouldn't have to put it out. He'd light the next one from the one that he was just putting out. Billows of smoke were just surrounding us at all times. Well, we landed at Shannon Airport. There, a huge Irishman weighing about 240 pounds gets on the left, sits on the left side of me. And he's sort of a farmer who probably hasn't bathed for a few months the way he smells, and he's emigrating to America. Well, here one of them is folding into half of my seat from one side, and the other folding into half of my seat from the other side, and Shannon is a free port, so both of them had brought whiskey on board. And they were drinking this whiskey and getting drunker by the minute. And I didn't share the whiskey, so they began striking up a conversation with one another, talking across me. So I had the fumes of the smoke and the whiskey and everything else. And it got to the point where really it was so bad, and I thought of 12 hours of this. That was before the jet airplane days. I just didn't know what to do. Again, it came to that sort of breaking point. I put my seat back and I just began laughing. I couldn't stop. It was so funny. But suddenly I found that this situation, far from being intolerable, had really become quite delightful. The thing is that we can make this world what we want it to be. We don't have to accept it. Pleasure and pain, these are neuter in themselves. It's what you make of it. It's how you respond. Pleasure has no reality except as you give joy to the experience. Why then is ice cream pleasurable to you? Because you have made up your mind that you will find ice cream pleasurable. And if you can change your mind, you will find that it will become unpleasurable. This is true. One time, my teacher said to his guru, that his guru asked him if he liked cauliflower because he hadn't eaten it one day. He said, "No, I don't like it." So a week later, his guru said to him, "How do you like cauliflower?" He said, "Well, I told you, sir, I don't like it." He said, "You've had it in everything you've eaten this past week." He'd been cooking it in different ways. The thing is that his discipline was such that if there was something that you didn't like, then make yourself like it. Why allow yourself to be a slave of circumstance? Why allow yourself to say that, "Oh, I cannot tolerate this," or "I must have that in order to be happy"? This is the way we have to live. If there's something that you don't like to eat, for example, that's been offered to you, all right, you don't have to fill your plate with it, but take a little bit. Eat it. Don't just take it, eat it. You will be surprised to find out how much you can get out of an experience that may have been to you a very unpleasurable one. There was something I was reading in the autobiography of Saint Thérèse of Lisieux. There was one person in her convent whom she particularly disliked. And so she made it a deliberate point to do everything for that person that she could, until it reached the point where this person said to her one day, "Why do you seem to like me more than all the others?" And Thérèse of Lisieux smiled. She didn't know what to say. But the thing is that she had been finding joy in this. There can be joy in self-discipline. I remember reading in the book of Swami Ram Das how he was here incidentally a few years ago, and a beautiful soul, really a great soul. He was speaking at the American Academy of Asian Studies, and perhaps he spoke at this ashram. It was long before I was affiliated with it, so I don't know, but he described how he was going along the countryside, and his feet would become so lacerated that they bled terribly. His body was getting so ill that he was in a fever all the time, and he was really in a very bad way physically. And inwardly he just gave it to God and kept chanting God's name all the louder, and he found that in this experience such joy came over him. The fact is that even the greatest pain can be joyful. Even the greatest pleasure for some people can cause you misery if you happen not to accept that as pleasure. The truth is that joy is an internal fact. It has nothing to do with where you are, with what you are eating or drinking, with whom you are with. It has nothing to do with anything except your own inner self. If you will understand then that it is your reaction that counts, if you'll understand that it is what you think and how you feel that makes this world what it is for you, then you must understand also that what you must do is get beyond this storm outside and get into this inner world where these things that you are seeking really exist, where they are to be found. You won't find them in that storm. You will see only reflections there, reflections as if in 1,000 mirrors, and that is what this world is made of. Mirrors, mirrors everywhere. Nothing but mirrors, and you see yourself reflected in the flowers, in the people downtown, in the things that you do, in the things that you enjoy, in the things that cause you pain. Everything is but a reflection of you. This universe exists as an objective reality, but for you it exists as a subjective reality. It's true that I'm talking, I see you here, it affects me in a particular way. At the same time, you are here seeing me. I have not created you out of my own mind. But what I see in you is what I am prepared to see, what I have developed the capacity to observe, to appreciate, to react to. What you see in me is, again, to this extent, but a reflection of what you are. This is why when people cause pain to others, what they are really doing is inflicting pain on a certain aspect of themselves. When they give joy to others, it's because they are giving joy to a certain aspect of themselves. Remember this, and then understand that the real way to live is to live with joy. To live with joy at all times. To keep joy in your heart. What else is there but joy, if you learn this truth? But you have first to find that joy. And you will find it not on just a beautiful philosophical level. You will find it only when you get into the deeper reaches of your nature, when you find that one unmoving spirit inside. That doesn't mean that you have to find it in an absolute way before you can realize these truths at all. But it does mean that the more you go within yourself and the more you find this joy inside, the more it's going to spill over into the world outside. The more you are going to understand that all things are but a play of God's. All things good and bad, there is nothing good or bad. Who is to do what to whom in this world? There is only God. There was a saint who was beaten up and left for dead, and his brothers in the monastery came and found him and brought him back and nursed him lovingly and finally brought him back to consciousness. And they were pouring milk into his mouth and stroking his brow. And one of them said to him as he stroked his brow, "Brother, do you know who is nursing you?" And this saint looked up with a smile. He said, "Yes, the same one who beat me up a little while ago." It's all God. There's nothing but God. If we can have this understanding and see in all things manifestations of His joy, then what can touch you? But we have first to find that joy. There's another story of this was told by Swami Vivekananda, of a sadhu that he met in Rishikesh. I've told this story on other occasions. This sadhu was going through the streets, and he was naked. He didn't wear any clothing. He was one of those Naga sadhus who believe that the whole universe belongs to God. Nothing is ours, so why bother to keep anything? God is sky-clad, let me be sky-clad too. This is the idea. Not to be bound by possessions. They live for the most part way out in the woods. They don't live in the cities. But he was passing through this remote village, which was remote at that time, and some children of the village saw him and began running after him, pelting him with stones, and he was bleeding. His whole back was just a mass of welts and bruises and sores. And he came home to his little ashram in the woods there, laughing joyously. He said, "Oh, we had such a good time today. The boys were playing with me, throwing things, and we were all just having such a lovely time in God." And he didn't think, "This is my body, how dare they do this to me?" Get rid of this thought of separateness that makes you suffer, that makes you rejoice in a pleasurable way. Get rid of this thought that keeps you out of your own true self, which is no body, which has no body, which has no feelings of emotion, of ups and downs, which is constantly and forever unbrokenly in this joy that cannot be touched by anything. How will you find this joy? By meditation. Only as you calm your mind and get down beneath the surface of these waves, understand that they have no reality. The wave is only possible because there has been a trough formed. A displacement of water downward makes possible a movement of water upward, but it's all the same. The spirit is unmoving. It only creates this appearance of agitation by this law of duality, up and down. The positive is not possible without the negative. You will find that for every pleasure that you have in this world, there will be also a pain. Mark my words, for they are true. For everything there will be an opposite. Everything that you give yourself to, if you think to find happiness by this pursuit of pleasure, if you think to find happiness by just going in an outward way all the time, you will have to suffer all the opposites that are a part and parcel of that experience. But if, on the other hand, even in the midst of pleasure, you keep back a little bit, discriminate, offer it up as a sacrifice to your inner self. That doesn't mean that when you see a beautiful painting you should yawn. It doesn't mean when somebody gives you an ice cream cone and you like ice cream, you should and gag on it. It doesn't mean that you should be bored or distressed with everything. It doesn't mean that you should have a disillusioned bitterness. Enjoy. Some saint I met in down near Puri, in India, was saying that you should not enjoy the beauties of nature because you might become attached. I say that you should enjoy it, but understand. He was a very cold sort of person. I was not attracted to him. Enjoy, but enjoy in the right way. Offer your enjoyment inwardly upon the altar of your spiritual perception, and you will find that perception growing. Meditate, feel this consciousness within, and then when anything comes that's beautiful, when anything comes that's good, particularly, the pleasures of this world, don't kill yourself to them. Rather, spiritual progress makes colors more vivid, sounds more enchanting. This whole world becomes more beautiful the more you find of this joy within. This is a fact. But it becomes so because in the midst of enjoyment, you turn it within. You discriminate and feel it as an inner thing rather than as something you've got to cling to desperately with both hands lest you have it ripped out of your grasp. Enjoy inside and know that it may be taken from you tomorrow, and so what? It won't matter. Just let it go. Let it come and let it go. The Lord gives and the Lord takes away. You don't have to say it at the graveside. Say it at all times and say it with joy. All things are ours if we have this consciousness. Nothing is ours if we don't. Even in the midst of plenty, we will be afraid of losing everything that we have. Nothing will be truly ours. And then when suffering comes to you, when difficult experiences come to you, again, feed this fire of joy in your heart. Say, well, all right, let it come, let it come, let it go. It's this way today, tomorrow I'll feel better. When things go well, all right, so they're good today, tomorrow I may lose them. Let me not be attached, but feed this flame of joy within. Always understand, use these things as, in other words, this is an illustration that's used in the scriptures of India. A lake into which all the tributary rivers pour, fills up. But if you allow the waters to flow outward from that lake, if you have openings in the walls and the sides of that lake, soon that lake will become dry. If the rivers of your perception go outward, soon the lake of your joy inside will dry up. But if, on the contrary, if you don't have any rivers, you'll have some lake there. But if you use all the experiences that come to you to feed this lake, let them come within yourself. This is something I don't know if I can even describe properly to you, but the thing is that supposing somebody praises you, for example, remember what Jesus said when, I think it was Nicodemus called him a good man. He said, "Why do you call me good? There is none good but God." This is the answer. This is the feeling to get. When somebody praises you then, inwardly feel that he is the one who did this. He is the one who deserves it. That is to say, take that praise and offer it within. Then praise is sweet and blame a dream when thy song flows through me. Then life is sweet and death a dream when thy song flows through me. Then love is sweet and hate a dream when thy song flows through me. The reason being that there is no hate, there is no death, there is no suffering. There is nothing but this great fire of joy within yourself if you can but uncover it. Feed that flame, feed it with your experiences. As they come to you, just withdraw a little bit. And as you enjoy it in your heart. You'll find yourself more and more this song of joy flowing through your being, and you will know that all the pains of this world were but dreams. There was never anything but that one song of undying joy, that Satchidanandam, that ever-existing, ever-conscious bliss. God bless you.